Welcome back to the channel, lads and ladies, and take note of the position qwerty is in this up-armored T-34. We're going to start in the middle of the action, or I guess the beginning of the action, but at least in medias res, to use a literary term. qwerty's, as you all are no doubt aware, a huge contributor to the replays section of the channel because he is a big-time player of War Thunder. I can tell this guy plays a lot of matches, and one of the things that I like about qwerty's is he manages to play the game successfully using a style that I always wanted to be successful with, but I've found better results playing more passively myself. And of course, my great passion is close air support. Complain if you want, but give it a shot if you think it's overpowered, especially with the state of casts in War Thunder right now. It is definitely one of those things that it can sometimes take over a match, but far more often you can get a lot more kills and battle activity by committing to ground vehicles, and qwerty's gives a great example of that today. Now, I mentioned that our guy qwerty's has a playstyle that I wish I could do well with, and that is an aggressive one. He tends to find a power position early in the match, take down the first wave of enemies, as he's done here, rapidly picking up 5 kills, even more alongside his teammates in this area, and locking down the zone. And then he quickly moves on to another strong position. Shoot and move, shoot and move. And I say that I haven't had success with this strategy because usually I'll shoot and then die while I'm moving. And if you notice, the vast majority of vehicles that qwerty's ends up killing in his videos are also people who are on the move, which makes sense. War Thunder is a game that's designed to encourage or require people to get out of their dug-in positions and make things happen. And of course, a vehicle that's on the move, even in the higher tiers, is at a disadvantage to one that's sat in a good defensible position. qwerty's now finding another spot. Enemy M10 out in the open. We saw him, we can hear him, but qwerty's checking the horizon just to see what's going on, knowing that there are already 3 allies in the area to take down that M10. He's gonna go ahead and hand that one over to them, and just as well as 2 enemies come in, taking down no doubt the more dangerous one, the LVT, as it looks like, what is that, a Cromwell or something, coming in, still firing on the move. We'll see if that's going to work out for him. And in a video where I say qwerty's is going to get a lot of kills, well, my money's on qwerty's. Angled armor of the T-34 is not enough to stop the round from that enemy Cromwell, and yet the enemy tank gets taken down as qwerty's team continues to provide good support to our power player. Sherman looks like a 105, I'm not quite sure, but I thought I detected some thickness in that barrel in the few frames that I had to scope it out. qwerty's now lying in wait. The enemy Sherman himself holding back. Not a bad decision, but not the right angle to protect his side armor, especially the lower side armor, from qwerty's. What is this, a 76mm round? Something like that. Anyway, what's the deal with this premium up-armored Sherman? The add-on armor doesn't make a huge difference, in my humble opinion. You can see that qwerty's is definitely still susceptible to being frontally penetrated by most of his enemies that he can face at this battle rating, especially with just how good the 75 mil is on these American Sherman tanks, the M24. You know that old song and dance. It's one of my favorite guns in the game, and it has almost 100 millimeters of penetration at close range. Doesn't do terribly against angled armor anyway, but you do need to aim for weak spots on the T-34. Same goes for the up-armored version. If nothing else, it might make the enemy aim just a little bit longer before letting fly, and that can certainly help you. The psychological advantage of using a vehicle that has slightly more armor than what the enemy is used to facing is not insignificant. Along the same lines, though, this T-34 is going to move just a little bit more slowly than the regular tech tree counterpart, and once again, the armor is nothing magical. These add on high hardness, rather thin armor plates historically were usually added to vehicles to protect against infantry portable anti-tank rifles, something that you just don't see anymore in the doctrine of modern military forces, and yet you can still see some of these old anti-tank rifles being used in guerrilla warfare, in asymmetrical warfare today, and they do have the ability to punch through the thinner parts of tank armor, except now combatants will be aiming at stuff like roof armor, hatches, optics, stuff like that, or they'll just do their best and get blown up by some high explosive counter battery fire. In any event, QWERTY's holding this power position because enemies keep on filtering into his location. Generally, you see QWERTYs with several repositions during a match, but when you have such a strong power position, all you really need to do is pop out of cover, take down everybody you see, and if they keep on coming in, you might as well keep taking them down. And since this is a battle encounter, there's no point in capturing capture zones. Battle is one of those game types, what would you call it? We'll call it that. Game types that I was not too fond of in the past because, again, I like to fly close air support, so I like having that early spawn points advantage. Even the M22 with its 37mm cannon punching through the armor of this T-34. Wow. That's a lot of damage. Anyway, I like being able to hop in a fast vehicle, grab a cap, and know that I have enough SP to respawn in an aircraft and fly some CAS or shoot down some enemy aircraft, because that's kind of my thing. I really love air versus ground and air versus air in ground battles because there's no markers. It's just a lot of fun for me. But QWERTY definitely favors ground vehicles. I'm not sure if I've seen him use aircraft at all. I think maybe a little bit. There's definitely a lot to learn with aircraft in War Thunder, especially if you want to be successful at close air support and not just doing things like suicide bombing, which it's just not the best way to use your equipment. It's certainly not the most efficient use of your spawn points. As a brilliant counterpoint, QWERTY's here demonstrating what a medium tank, what's the spawn point cost for this tank? Maybe 120, 140, something like that, SP. And he has gotten a huge advantage by being active. He's picked up an incredible number of kills. If you could kill 12 ground vehicles with close air support, people would be decrying it as overpowered and ridiculous. In fact, the only thing that's that powerful in CAS is probably American 50 cals at low tier, or anything let's say under BR 3.0, that has some high caliber machine guns, because the Americans can punch through a good amount of armor. You can take down almost anything from the top, except maybe some of the KVs. You can even kill a T-34 with 50 cals from the top with the early model turret. And you also get, with the Americans, about double or more the amount of ammunition than other aircraft carry. So they can end up being easily the strongest close air support at a tier where you have a lot less competition in the sky and a lot less effective anti-aircraft on the ground. Things that tend to balance out higher tier aircraft. In any event, this is not that, and that's sort of the point. You hear people complaining, and I guess I've just gotten stuck on this comparison with close air support, but I still hear people complain about CAS, and I get it. Often, when you feel powerless, the first reaction is outrage. I'm being raped, and it's not okay. And let me tell you something. Forcing this meta on someone, rape is not okay, right? It sucks to be powerless. This is War Thunder. You came here to kill and to be killed, and it can feel like you don't stand a chance, but I think qwerty has shown us that ground vehicles can do just as well, no, far better than close air support at this tier, at taking down enemies. And these guys that aren't looking in the direction that he's coming from, they just don't stand a chance. So you can complain about close air support, or you can do even better by getting good at ground vehicles. And then, if you're in a ground vehicle and you want to take down some CAS, even from, not to quote the Orange Doom too heavily here, but he's actually right on this point, that SPAA in War Thunder is more than capable of taking down any close air support at its battle rating. You just have to learn how to use them. You don't even need to leave the ground to take down enemy air. With 15 kills, using up all of his APHE Stellinium-infused God rounds, qwerty has shown the true dominance of aggressive and intelligent play of ground vehicles with one spawn in an up-armored T-34, where the extra armor, I would say, really didn't do him any favors. Now, for something completely different. At least this is Big Papa to the vehicle, or I guess little brother. I guess it's a lot younger, isn't it? But in terms of size, magnificence, glory, power, and just sheer intimidation factor, there really is nothing like IS-7. Here's a vehicle that would have been considered absolutely ludicrous a few years ago in War Thunder, and now, well, it's just not even considered. Facing off against modern MBTs, facing off against some vehicles that themselves have absolutely ludicrous offensive capabilities, and yet, as the last heavy tank in the game, IS-7 is still worthy. And again, the same map, we see qwerty taking a different tack here. The mass of this Soviet beast, definitely too much to handle in an open, elevated fighting position like he used earlier on. The enemy team already well positioned against him, and qwerty this time fighting on the back row. Even without support from his teammates, picking up a couple of kills very nicely against foes who were looking the wrong direction. In fact, in a heavy tank, pulling off a flanking maneuver against one vehicle that's reasonably mobile, and another that is among the most mobile in the game. Overextend and you may find yourself flanked by Stalin's stubby hammer. In any event, just look at the size of that cannon barrel, the massive muzzle brake, the huge homogeneous armor. Just things that you don't see anymore. QWERTY's now filling in the net, as I've spoken about before. You can see one of his teammates falling. QWERTY's moving to intercept the enemy that presumably is now advancing on this area, and we gon' see. Oh yes! The beautiful side armor of IS-7 deflecting the round from that MBT-70, which has an incredible amount of armor penetration, but there's only so much you can do against 200 millimeters of highly sloped side armor. Enemy tank took his shot, and it just wasn't good enough, showing off what the power of overpowering, what would you call it, megalomania can do for you. Last of the heavy tanks in War Thunder, not the last option, though. There are one or two other doomsday prototypes that did end up getting built in Soviet Union, and I would very much love to see some of those objects come to the game in the future. I think we can all agree that War Thunder has moved beyond the point where these insane end of Cold War heavy tank designs, we've moved past the point where they're overpowered and into territory where they'll be facing things like modern MBTs, and I just want to see that, okay? I just want more ridiculousness in this game. And even if they're not really meta, and IS-7 is not really meta. In fact, you could say that IS-7 is still the dark horse at this battle rating, even though its gun is much more powerful with the penetration mechanic calculator that's used in War Thunder now, demonstrated well against the lower frontal plate of that, what is that? Challenger? Sorry, my British tank names are just not very great. But still, you've got such a low fire rate compared with the competition. You can see that premium XM801. Is that it? XM801? It's the Abrams prototype. XM1, that's right, XM1. Easily slicing through the ridiculous turret armor of IS-7. This is not by any means an overpowered tank in the game of War Thunder. In fact, the meta is speedy boys with fast-firing laser beam guns, and IS-7 ducks all that and moves to one of the fastest-firing derp guns in the game, but by no means an autocannon, and a ludicrous number of secondary machine guns that are mostly for show, but surprisingly effective against light-skinned vehicles and aircraft/helicopters, and the sheer derp power of the of that huge power pole of a cannon on IS-7 speaks a language unheard in these times, but fluent in its own way, punctuating every shot with a beautiful kill brought to you alongside the devastation in view in the post-penetration damage. Replay? What's it called when you get that little window and it tells you exactly what you just bad touched inside the enemy tank? That thing. Anyway, I think I've made my case for IS-7. Certainly a meme tank at high tier. Potentially one of those vehicles that you can play high up in War Thunder and still feel like you're playing an old school tank against the new school meta. And, as qwerty's demonstrated here, by using good flanking maneuvers, by showing up just outside of where the enemy expects you to be, paying attention to the map, seeing where the enemy team is active and intercepting people while they're on the move, like we saw earlier. At a much lower battle rating, you can have a good level of success with this vehicle. Add to that the fact that as the enemy team runs out of NBTs, they commonly fill their spawn with SPAA. You might even be able, up until you start facing 10.3s, to pick up some AA kills, and that's exactly what qwerty's is going to go for here. Just a little bit under leading that looks like the Japanese version of the Gepard, and getting focused by another SPAA that comes in aggressively. Definitely not something I would advise. Looks like a Falcon, so that sits at what, like a 7.0 now in the British tree. I think at the making of this video it was a 7.7, but even so, it's not one of those things that you're going to be successfully using against IS-7, and getting in between the turret and the booty on, what is that, an STB, something like that. Definitely an MBT with enough penetrating power to punch right through the turret of IS-7. No small feat, but a common occurrence when you're facing things like APFSDS laser beam launched nail gun rounds. And yet, with 6 kills, just missing picking up 7 or 8, and now being focused by enemy SPAA, something that you can completely laugh at in IS-7 up until you find out that it's actually a warrior infantry fighting vehicle, and that means that it has those guided missiles. Or should I say ATGMs. Another thing that can make your heavy tanks feel inadequate, and yet you do have an answer to that statement, and that is with the spudly power of a good old Spladersh. In any event, finally taken down by the warrior qwerty's with a couple of fantastic submissions to the channel. Always appreciated. I really enjoyed talking about what was going on in those matches and my own way of playing the game. And if you have a different way of playing the game, then I love to see that. That's one of the things I love about featuring replays on the channel. With that, there's a link to my Discord in the description of this video. You're welcome to join there and come and hang out with us and to submit your own replays. And I'll catch you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.